are now entering the Horror Sanctum.
Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay, alongside John and TJ, and today we're joined by actress Catherine M.S. or Catherine M.S. Yeah, you even got me saying it. Catherine Mary Stewart, who we've been calling CMS, who starred in numerous films and series in her illustrious career, including one of my favorites, Night of the Comet, The Last Starfighter, The Apple, Friday the 13th. Victim of More fan film that we talked about, and my mother's favorite film of all time, Weekend at Bernie's. So, Catherine, welcome to the Sanctum, and thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
So, I did want to ask, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme with our shows because we asked this with another guest. I know you were in the Apple. And I did see the Canon Films documentary. I know you were on that. I'm a big Canon Films guy. It's just like nostalgia for me. What was that as far as that experience? Do you have any funny stories with Menachem and his brother? Just like their personality and what that was like?
Yeah, that was a wild ride, I have to say, because I was living in London, England, and I was a dancer. I was training as a dancer. I was going to this performing arts school that focused on dance, but we also did acting and singing and all sorts of other stuff like that. And I just by chance ran into a couple of fellow students from the school, sort of going in the opposite direction in the morning on the way to class. And I was like, where are you guys going? And they said, well, we heard about this audition for this movie, and we thought, it's a dance audition. So we thought we'd just go ahead and go and see what that was like. And I was like, maybe I'll tag along. So I did. I tagged along with them, and it was one of those huge cattle call auditions. There had to be like 200 people dancing away.
Wow.
And I found myself in the middle of all that. And while I was auditioning, Menachem, I saw him at front. He was in the front of this huge kind of, I don't know, massive sort of hall.
Mm-hmm.
And he started doing this like thing with his fingers, framing like that. And somebody came up to me and said, the director would like to speak to you. I saw him doing this, but I was like, that's weird. Never seen that before. And so they pulled me out of this huge group of people, and he said, do you act? And I was like, sure, yeah. Yes, I do. And he said, he asked me to read for the lead role in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me if I could sing, which I said, sure, I could sing. And so, having been completely unprepared for anything, to even dance audition,
Mm-hmm.
I was auditioning for this feature film. And like within 2 days, I was given the role.
Wow.
So it was one of those bizarre situations. And like a couple of months later, we were in Berlin, Germany, before the wall was down. It was like 1979, shooting this crazy movie. It was called a futuristic rock musical. It's called The Apple, sort of loosely based on an Adam and Eve kind of a theme.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like in the middle of this weird roller coaster ride. Just kind of, I was young, I was sort of naive, and I was just having the time of my life. You asked about a funny story. I didn't have any clue really what I was doing, but the night before you shoot, you get a call sheet, right? It tells you what time you're supposed to be there the next day, or ready to be picked up and all that. Well, somehow one day I didn't see the call sheet, and I thought I had the day off. Now, West Berlin at that time was just it was like the polar opposite of East Berlin. Like East Berlin, which we were able to go into, actually is just dead. It's a really quiet, sort of dead, depressing place. West Berlin is like walking into the middle of a crazy circus.
Wow.
It's I mean, I'm sure there's normal people there, but being with all these dancers I was exposed to things that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. But anyway, this one night when I was I was supposed to be picked up the next morning at like 7:30 in the morning or 6:30. I was out all night long with a bunch of people, party. And I get to the hotel, and there's these people, these production assistants, freaking out because they can't find me, and I had to, I don't know if I even had a chance to shower. And I get to the studio where we were shooting, and Menachem, who was kind of rough, he was
Right.
he's a rough dude, man. He came to the makeup trailer because I'd held him up for like an hour, and that's big bucks in a movie. He came in, he goes, "You would never work in this movie business again." He was yelling at me. Oh my God,
Wow.
what's happening?
Oh my
He was
gosh.
so mad at me, which is
Man.
understandable. But the weird thing about it was, it kind of freaked me out. But the fact that I was doing it in the first place was weird to me anyway. And at that point in my life, I was like, well, I'll do this and then I'll go back and dance.
Sure.
So it wasn't like I'd spent my whole childhood dreaming of being a movie star or something like that. And all of a sudden it was going to be, taken away from me. So, but it was everything about that movie was kind of cliche. The way I was discovered, the way he said that particular line to me. I mean, it was just, but what an awesome experience in a way.
Yeah, he's that whole era of filmmaking is so interesting, and just that studio. It's I can't get enough of hearing about it because it's something. If I feel like you living through it's so we hear about it, but it's just I can only imagine what it was like back then dealing with that, and just all the stories you hear about them and that and canon.
Yeah.
One thing I was curious about too, and I know that Jay and TJ probably have more specifics, but so you filmed The Last Starfighter, which I probably the most underrated like 80s sci-fi movie ever. Like I love it. I think it's tremendous. Um was that before or after Night of the Comet? Because what's interesting to me is in Night of the Comet, you've got Nick Castle directing, and then your
The Last Starfighter, Nick Castle.
Sorry, Last Starfighter, you have Nick Castle directing, right? And that's just interesting, that connection. And then your co-star in The Last Starfighter was in Halloween 2, and then Nick Castle was Michael Myers. Was that something that at the time you knew about, or was it back then you just kind of were like, I'm going to work, it's a job, I'm meeting these people? I wonder how that factored in, like as you took that.
You know what? It didn't factor in at all at that point. At that time, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And also, in those days, Lance Guest, who played Alex in The Last Starfighter, he and I were young actors in Hollywood, and we were working like all the time. And I wasn't aware that he was in the Jaws, or excuse me, he was in the Jaws movie, but also the Halloween movie. And I didn't know anything about Nick Castle, except that he was just a lovely man and a lovely director. And I'm so pleased that you like that movie, because it was really one of the best experiences I ever had. I found out about their background when we started doing conventions.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, like, well, Lance would have his photos from those movies that he did. But it took a little convincing to get Nick to do these conventions, because he thought, why? And our agent who sets us up with these things, kind of knew the potential with the Mike Myers thing.
Yeah.
And oh my God, all of a sudden, Nick Castle is at these conventions with lines of people a mile long. And Lance and I are like, huh? And my joke with Nick is like, it could be anybody. It could have been, I could be, Michael Myers or whatever, the Shadow or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But he was just sitting there thinking, I should have started doing this a long time ago, because he is so popular, and he's kind of like the most laid back. He's like a hippie, basically. He always has been. And he just kind of has a nice glass of wine at the end of the day, and he'll buy everybody a glass of wine, and has a big old smile on his face. Yeah, it cracks me up. It's really funny.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting how that sort of thing progresses. Nick Castle is actually going to be at a local convention in Nashville soon, and I think we're going to definitely go. It's ironically, I think he lives somewhere in Tennessee. I've heard him and Dick Warlock. They were both
Dick
involved.
Warlock's East Tennessee.
Yeah. But yeah, one thing I did want to bring up too, and I definitely want to give time to TJ and Jay. I know they probably have a lot to ask, especially Night of the Comet. When I was a kid, I loved the movie Nighthawks, and you were one of the first actresses when I was little that I made that realization of like actresses being in different movies, because I saw Night of the Comet, and then it was like a week later I saw Nighthawks, and I was like, wait a minute, she was in that movie. It was kind of an odd thing when you're like 9 or 10 to figure that out. What was that? Was that kind of like a day walk in, walk out type of situation, or did you get to spend a lot of time there just working in that? I know that was a small role, but I was curious about that.
Yeah, that was when I was still living in London. I'd done the Apple, and from the Apple I got an agent, and I auditioned for Sylvester Stallone. Me and like 3 other girls got to meet him, and I was the chosen one for this 3-word role. It was very quick, but I did, and it was just one day. But what was cool about it was that was the day they exploded the department store that I was supposedly working in. They did that on the same day, so I got to watch all that sort of special effects and everything. So that was cool, and also just working for Sylvester Stallone. First of all, he'd done the Rocky, and we were all us girls were just like, oh, he's just so handsome. Speaking of,
call Stallone.
Siri thought I was talking to her. I must have said something similar. Oh, I should take that off. That's so weird. I'm still not used to this watch. So I was swooning over him. And by the way, he's probably 5'7" as well, and on his website or whatever. But
he's advertised as 5'9".
Oh
man.
My God.
No.
He's really small. He's I would say Tom Cruise and Sylvester Stallone are probably about the same height. Anyhow, so that was really fun. But also, what I remember so specifically about that was working with Rutger Hauer.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Tremendous actor.
He scared the crap out of me, which was sort of intentional. But I mean, he never left character. He was always in character, and I was just like, oh my God, It was sort of, in retrospect, I was like, that guy just hates me. I know it. But in retrospect, I realized what was going on. He was just evil. I mean, what an actor. Holy smokes.
The Hitcher himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. It was a shame to lose him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely that's I definitely want to hand over to TJ, because I know he's got some pretty good questions. I know Night of the Comet's definitely coming up for sure.
Okay, cool.
All right. Yeah. So how did you get involved with Night of the Comet? That was kind of like your first foray into the world that we kind of live in, the horror, sci-fi, fantasy kind of world.
Yeah, it kind of crosses a lot of genres. I feel like that movie. I mean,
Post-apocalyptic.
yeah, which Tom Eberhardt wrote and directed it, and
Mhm.
he loves the whole post-apocalyptic genre. He loves that so much. And it's such a unique movie, because
It
it's
is.
not a zombie movie that's scary. It's not a Valley Girl necessarily movie, and it's not just a straight comedy. It's all those weirdo things kind of combined, which is really cool. And I think it contributes to its longevity in a way.
Mhm.
But the first movie that I did in LA was The Last Starfighter.
Okay.
And that same year, later on, it was Night of the Comet.
All
Oh.
right. So you did film
So
Starfighter first.
I did.
Okay.
Starfighter was first. And yeah, I remember auditioning for it. I had a little bit of a foundation with The Last Starfighter, so they knew sort of who I was coming into it. And it's so funny because I've gotten to know her a little bit through the conventions. Heather Langenkamp and I auditioned together
All
as
right.
Wow.
sisters.
From
I
the
didn't know
original
that.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. As
Hmm.
a matter of fact, so to finish that story is because we both sort of had, darker hair and sort of thicker eyebrows, and we really looked much more like sisters than Kelly and I did. And Kelly auditioned at the same day. It was sort of like Heather and I went in, and then Kelly and whoever she auditioned with went in, who was blonde and blah blah blah. And so when I found out that I got the job, they asked me to come down to the studio. They were going to do some photographs because you see those family photos of us. They were going to do that, and I was surprised. I didn't know it was Kelly, so I was really kind of surprised that she was cast as my sister. Uh, um, so I mean, it's a pretty traditional way of becoming involved with it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with how it's such a hybrid of like it's not a zombie film per se, but there are a sort of zombie in it that's unlike like we've never seen one like devolve in like real time where they have presumably
Mm-hmm.
like a couple day lifespan before they turn into like the sand from an ant farm. Yeah.
That's
Those are,
right. The red dust, right?
yeah.
I know. You do see them. They kind of change. Like the box boy, Ivan Ross, that character. You sort of see him take off his glasses. He's slowly getting more zombie like, and you
Mhm.
see the characters sort of slowly break down.
Yeah. Did you want to have like some makeup effects or anything in that?
No,
No,
I was good.
you were good.
I was
Yeah.
good with the big old hair and I got a kick out of my costumes because the costume person and we shopped together. I think there was a plan on basically the colors that they wanted, but Kelly and I both had, well, she was mostly in her cheerleading outfit, but we both had a real influence
Mhm.
on the costumes that we got to wear, which was
Mm,
fun for me. Very, very, very 80s, which I
Yes.
loved.
definitely.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's not only like a quintessential 80s film, but I think it has the most quintessential 80s scene where you're going shopping with Kelly
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and you're doing it to Girls Just Want to Have Fun as the soundtrack. I mean, what could be more 80s than two 80s girls with the 80s hair
I
doing in a
know.
shopping mall,
I know.
dancing to
I
Girls
was
Just Want to Have Fun.
fantastic. And you got to try on all these great clothes and this so when Tom was like thinking about this movie, he
Hmm.
actually interviewed some young women, the ages of the characters, and said, "What would you do if, like, it was the end of the world, and everybody was dead except you and your sister, instead of them going, oh my God, no, they would be like, this is fantastic. And then we go shopping, we take our credit cards and we just spend blah, 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 whatever. And so that, that sort of notion, he thought, this is great. This is unique. This is different. Um, it's so great. It's so much fun. And yeah, I guess there's a moment where we're like, oh, geez, I had this crush on a boy or whatever. And we'll go through that. Then we just go shopping and it's fantastic.
And that's totally what teenage girls would do.
Oh,
100%.
I mean, how great would that be? Your parents are gone. Nobody,
No
you don't
money.
have to answer to anybody. You don't have to pay for anything.
Right.
You just have that nasty zombie issue, but never mind. We can deal with that.
I'm so curious. What do you think happens to the characters at the end? Because you kind of get away from the lab people, you rescue the little kids, and then it just kind of ends. It's like, do you think there's more people out there? What do you think happens to your characters at the end?
Yeah, some people have said to me, why would you wear that dress? Because it's this bizarre, weird kind of a dress that your grandmother might wear or something. But I sort of thought, I think this is exactly what Reg would do. She would become like Mother Earth. She's like, okay, here we are in this situation. I've gone from being able to, defend myself with MAC 10s to I have to take care of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my thought behind that. And yeah, I don't know, there's so much room for a sequel. It would be so much fun to do a sequel, but it would have to, which they've talked about. I'm sure I don't know if you've heard, but they've talked about different ideas to sort of continue it on because there's so much room and potential for what might what happens to Sam and DMK and what happens to gosh, what's his name? Hector.
And you could kind of follow the George Romero kind of thing. You could do Dawn of the Comet and Day of the Comet.
Yeah. Right? I know. It would be really, really fun. Yeah, who knows? I mean, probably there's somebody else out there, but it'd be a fun thing to explore.
Yeah. It sounds like you'd be up for it if the right scenario come along.
Absolutely. The thing that I don't like about remakes, for instance, especially nowadays, because special effects are so fantastic and it's all about, the violence and the explosions and all that special effects stuff. It takes away kind of the integrity of the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, to me, if they did a sequel, which I think are better than remakes, there would have to be an element of integrity. Of course, it's going to be a different look and all that other stuff. But what I think is so great about things like Last Starfighter and Night of the Comet and many 80s movies is that the story was about the characters,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, there was all this weirdo stuff going on, extraordinary situations going on around them. But I think what gives them longevity is that people can kind of relate to the characters on some level.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that happens as much with the really big blockbuster space movies where, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that would be important to me.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately horror movies now too. There's so many shortcuts that are taken in filmmaking. And yeah, I agree. Storytelling and characters it's nice to see people go back to that. So
yeah. It's amazing to me when I do these conventions and I talk to the people and how much they love these movies and carry them with them and want their children to be a part of them as well. It's really wonderful.
When did you first start doing conventions and really kind of learn about all the fandom that has existed around these films now?
Yeah, it blew me away. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I remember my agent he attended the 25th anniversary screening of The Last Starfighter in LA, and I happened to be
Wow.
there.
Right.
And he pulled me outside, and said, "Listen, this is what I do. Would you be interested in doing conventions?" And I was like, "Oh, that's weird," because I didn't really understand what they were.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I don't know that I want to do that. So it took me a while, and he finally convinced me. And I think it was like, I think,
25th would have been like 2009.
yeah, I think it was around 2010 or 2009, even maybe. Yeah, in I think it was New Jersey.
Okay.
And I was so nervous going to it. And he had Lance come as well. So the two of us so we could sort of bounce off each other. But it was fantastic. I was like, you people know more about me than I do. I mean, the fans are unbelievable. They're so great. Yeah, so it's always really a pleasure to meet people who like your work and are so nice. And my feeling is, the only reason I'm here is because of you. So of course I want to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna hand off to Jay for some Weekend at Bernie's questions.
Actually, night with the Comet. I thought about it today. I just really had one question. I read that Kelly took one of the cheerleading costumes home with her. Did you take anything?
Oh yeah,
it's not
for sure.
incriminating, of course.
No. They it was a very low budget movie. They didn't pay us very much, and that was part of the thing. They was like, "Take what you want," and I did for sure. Those little, I don't know if you remember the little boots. They were really weird leather things, that kind of overlapped and had a tie.
Yeah.
I love those things. And again, I chose the wardrobe, so I liked it. The kind of the green shirt with the big shoulders, that was pretty messed up by the time we finished, so I didn't take that. There were gray pants that I took that were sort of tucked on the sides. Yeah, no, I took a bunch of stuff and I wore it all the time. And she had the cheerleading costume. Yeah, I mean, so that's something that she could wear, but it was an authentic. It was a really good wool cheerleading outfit, and she had that for a long, long time. And then there was a whole, I mean, you'll have to ask her the details about it, but there was a whole thing. And then she, at one point, sold it to somebody or something like that, but with the agreement that she would be able to buy it back at some point.
Mhm.
And then she found out that this person, I don't know if it was a he or she, had sold it or something. Anyway, she lost track of it. I know. And she was really upset. But somehow she tracked it down and got it back. Yeah. So yeah. There's some nostalgia in that thing, man.
Are you still doing any conventions now?
I am. Yeah. I'm doing one in Seattle in May. I forget what it's called. Do you want me to look it up?
Sure.
It'll be on
Yeah,
my
sure.
also I'll post it on Facebook and stuff like that. But let's see. I got my glasses out because I'm getting old.
Do you ever come to any of the ones around Nashville? That's where we're all at.
Yeah. Oh, I love Nashville. I want to go back to Nashville. I just finished Willie Nelson's autobiography.
Oh,
You spent some time there. That was
Yeah.
a great book, by the way.
My wife's from
recommend it.
Austin, and he's basically a god in Austin.
I bet. Yeah, he's a big Texas guy. Hold on. This is so weird. I don't know why. I still have the hard copy calendar.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
I have like 3. The only one I was digital. I'm old school like that.
I have digital as well. I probably could have looked it up digitally, but okay. So, Crypticon
yeah.
in Seattle,
Okay. Yeah,
the
that's a big
weekend
one.
of May 19th. Yeah, so that's the next one I'm doing that I know of. Yeah, I do. Maybe it's funny after the pandemic, and everybody was just trying to catch up again. I did a whole bunch. But normally I will do like 2 or 3 a year,
Mhm.
which is good for me. But yeah, so that's the next one. I'm not sure
Okay.
what will be after that or before, but I would love to come to Nashville. That'd be fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the one we have here is Full Moon
Mhm.
Cineplex. They have a movie theater. They show older horror movies all the time. They put on a horror and tattoo convention every year. I
Oh,
think it's
cool.
It's usually in April. Yeah.
Mhm.
it's a good time. So, all right, well, that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, join the church group on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to wherever you're listening to us now, and come back next week when we talk about one of the most talked about films of last year, Barbarian. Catherine, thank you again for joining us. It was an absolute honor.
Oh, thank you, you guys. You were great. It was really fun.
Thanks so
Thanks
much.
so much.
And all right, so with TJ, John, I'm Jay. And until next time,
Keep it spooky.
Keep it spooky.
Yeah.